All right, welcome to our latest explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a really compelling theory, one that claims the official supply of XRP is, well, a massive illusion. We're going to break down where the coins really are and what that could mean for its future price. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's start with this number, 100 billion. You've seen it everywhere, right? It's the official total supply of XRP. And honestly, it's the anchor that keeps a lot of people saying, oh, the price can't go that high, there's just too much of it. But what if that's the biggest misconception in the market?
But here's the kicker. What if that number is basically a fantasy? What if the overwhelming majority of that supply is completely locked away, totally out of reach for you, me, or any trader? We're going to peel back the layers on this thing and show you a reality that might just flip everything you thought you knew about XRP's value on its head.
So our source material puts it perfectly with this analogy. You walk into a candy shop, you see all those candies and you think, wow, plenty for everyone. But then when a rush of people comes in, they're all scrambling for that tiny handful you can actually buy. That right there is a classic setup for a massive price shock.
Okay, so where are all these so-called locked coins? To really get the picture, we've got to follow the money and see where these billions of XRP are actually being held. And this, my friends, is where that whole 100 billion coin story really starts to fall apart.
Just take a look at this. That massive 100 billion number, it gets carved up into these huge chunks that are totally out of reach. You've got the escrow, the founder's holdings, the coins that are just plain lost. They make up almost the entire supply. And that little sliver left over, the part that's actually liquid and available for you or me to buy, it's tiny. It's just a fraction of the whole thing.
So let's really dig into this, okay? First up, you've got something like 36 billion XRP locked away in Ripple's escrow. That's a stability mechanism, right? It's not sitting on an exchange waiting to be sold. Then, you have another 30 billion held by founders and early partners in long-term strategic wallets. These aren't for day trading. And then, you have the graveyard. We're talking an estimated 15 billion coins that are just gone, lost forever. They show up on the ledger, sure, but for all practical purposes, they're ghosts.
And, this leads us to a really critical point. The way we all measure a crypto's value, its market cap, is built on a fundamentally flawed idea. It just takes the price and multiplies it by the total supply, as if every single coin could be sold tomorrow. For XRP, that's not just a small error. It's a massive distortion. It's a dangerous miscalculation of how scarce it truly is.
Yeah, this next analogy just nails it. Think about it. On paper, a city could claim to have trillions in gold. But if 95% of that gold is locked deep inside a vault like Fort Knox, what's actually available? Almost nothing. And that gap? That's where the price shock lives. When the market finally wakes up to that reality, assets get repriced, and they get repriced fast.
Now look, this isn't just some wild theory pulled out of thin air. We've seen this exact movie before. History is littered with examples of markets getting violently corrected when that big, comfy illusion of there's plenty to go around smashes head-on into the hard reality of, oh wait, there's almost none left.
Let's take gold, for example. Back between 2008 and 2011. Everyone knew there was a ton of gold in the world, right? But the thing is, most of it was tied up in jewelry, sitting in central bank vaults, or in long-term holdings. The moment investors clued into how little was actually available for trading, boom, the price more than doubled in just 3 years.
You see, the pattern is always the same. Back in the 70s oil crisis, everyone thought oil was basically endless. Then boom, embargoes hit, and the world suddenly realized how razor-thin the actual available surplus was. And what happened? Prices went through the roof, like almost overnight. And today, XRP is in the exact same setup. This perceived reality of abundance that's just masking an extreme underlying scarcity.
Okay, so we've established the supply is actually tiny, like incredibly small. So now, let's look at the other side of the coin. What happens when a potential tsunami of institutional demand comes crashing down on that tiny little supply? Yeah, this is where the theory gets really, really interesting. And listen, we're not talking about a bunch of retail traders speculating here. This is about the fundamental plumbing of the global financial system getting a massive upgrade. First up, you've got ISO 22-2022. It's a new global standard for financial messages that banks have to adopt by 2025. And guess what? XRP is one of the very few cryptos that's already compatible. Then you've got over 100 companies already using on-demand liquidity with XRP. And on top of that, more than 130 countries are looking into CBDCs, creating a huge need for a neutral bridge asset to connect them all.
So you get the picture, right? You've got this tiny, shrinking supply on one side, and on the other, you have this massive, unstoppable wave of institutional demand. When those two things collide, the theory says the conclusion is kind of inevitable. The price right now just doesn't reflect this reality.
So this really brings it all together. You've got maybe 5 to 10% of XRP that's even tradable. Meanwhile, trillion-dollar industries are starting to line up, needing that exact liquidity for their day-to-day operations. And all the while, the available supply is actually shrinking as more and more of it gets locked up by these big players. The stage is set for a supply shock of, well, historic proportion.
And according to the source material, this isn't going to be some slow, gentle climb. No way. The argument is that it'll be a sudden, violent repricing, a punishment, as they put it, for everyone who just looked at that big, misleading 100 billion number. When the market finally realizes how few candies are actually left in the shop, the price isn't just going to rise, it could absolutely explode.
And so, this really leaves us with one final thought. If this theory holds water, then the real story of XRP's value has been hiding in plain sight this whole time. And once you see that true scarcity, once you see past the illusion of abundance, you can't unsee it. The only question left is, when does the rest of the market finally wake up?